We're here today on Country Pocket with Kevin Gordon. The new album is The In Between. Kevin, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Trevor. Thank you.
No alcohol beyond this point?
That was something I stuck on the wall in a moment of, I don't know, hilarity or something. I think I found it in the back of an amplifier of mine.
So, tell me about your song Keeping My Brother Down. That's the first song we just heard to start the show. Uh, I think for a lot of people, when they're taking a walk in the dark woods, they're probably thinking of something other than sort of the burden that you describe as of what this country has done.
Right. I guess for me, that was a very, well, it was a personal image, and it was influenced by the title of a book of poems by Tiana Clark uh, called I Can't See the Trees Without the Blood, as well as um, the short story called Young Goodman Brown, which I'm having a under caffeinated moment of being unable to recall the author of that story, but it's just sort of the dark landscape where one is confronted with your fears or the challenges that you face, either you know as an individual or as a member of your country or whatever region. Um, that's kind of how I saw it, anyway.
Yeah, tell me about how you feel it's, as you put in the song, your burden to keep. You don't necessarily strike me based on the album as the type of guy who would go out and do something thoughtless like that in this day and age or back then. So just explain how you feel it's your burden to keep.
Well, it's just I feel a certain responsibility, even though, you know, a lot of people who come from my neck of the woods, meaning the South, prefer to kind of cast that responsibility off, saying, things like, well, that wasn't me, you know. But, as I think, I in the last several years have cultivated a greater awareness of um, how to look at how individual actions affect matters in the present tense, and how having an open view of history um, informs our present actions. Not sure I'm making complete sense here, but um, I spend some time on social media um, looking at statements from people who still, who are went to high school with or who still live in the area where I come from, which is northern Louisiana. And I'm just astounded at the relative blindness, um, calling Democrats without irony the enemy. And I mean, I laugh, but it's kind of disgusting. I mean, it's horrifying, really. So, I just, that song just kind of came out. I think I started writing it. It was pre George Floyd, um, but it was just a response to, that phenomenon. Um, I think I started it after Michael Brown was killed. And, it's just a way, for me, it's a way of working through um, feelings of uh, grief and guilt. Um, I don't know.
Yeah, you talk about the way people from northern Louisiana are behaving on Facebook. Um, I live in New York and I'm also often horrified by the way my neighbors behave on Facebook. It's not a unique phenomenon there, although there's certainly a bit of a darker history down there, even if it's not exactly perfect up here either. Um,
Right.
do you, as someone who, you know, no offense, grew up in an era when I didn't, are you seeing a clean line between that history of violence and repression way back in the day to what we're seeing emerging now?
Um, I mean, I guess my view on that is fairly dim. I would like to say that things are better. I think things I think matters overall are better in terms of more white people having greater awareness of not only the history, but of the responsibility um, to really look at our behavior um, and, do better, frankly. Um, I mean, I think you know, the advent of everyone having a video camera in their pocket uh, is at least partially responsible for why this phenomenon of black people getting killed by police even became a thing that was visible, even though it has obviously gone on for a long time. Um, so, I think our awareness is growing, but I think as is usual with human beings, you know, our collective progress or knowledge moves more slowly than we would like it to.
Yeah, I also think you picked a great word on the song Marion to describe sort of how the response is being handled when you said apathy. That
Yeah.
in, I mean, you mentioned George Floyd, and really good on Minneapolis and Minnesota for the way they responded, but uh,
Hmm.
more often than not, including in the case of Eric Garner, the response is quite a bit more apathy, like, okay, it happened. So,
Right. Yeah. Which is terrible. I was actually I played in Minneapolis last week, and the venue where I performed was literally right next door to the well, what used to be the police precinct that was burned down during the post George Floyd riots. Um, and it was interesting talking to people there about that fact, and because I wasn't sure at first. Some of these people I don't really know very well, but it was clear that they understood um, why that happened, and why the riots happened. Um, but yeah, apathy, applying not only to um, that sort of violence, but also to, in the case of the song Marion, about the response, government response to the AIDS crisis. Um, um, you know, both 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 being tremendous failures um, in terms of what should have been done, what should be done.
the title of your album is The In Between, and you have a great song sort of talking about living in that strange zone of life. Um, I think everyone can relate to the part about the pandemic being sort of a strange period where everything seems different and in flux, but at the same time, nothing's happening at all. Um, Describe to me what it feels like for you to be living in the in between and what that means to you.
Well, I suppose the I was applying that idea to the pandemic as well as kind of where I am in my life right now, with adult children out of the house and living in other cities. Just the overall um, feelings of isolation and you know crazy that I was feeling, particularly during the pandemic. You know, um, the bridge lyrics, referencing something that, the idea of Gary Busey playing Howard Hughes. That was a pretty personal reference, comic as it is intended to be. But this feeling of, um, as you say, nothing happening, but uh, the feeling of things being in flux and no certainty. I suppose that's what I was getting at.
Yeah, it was a real interesting time. You talk about uh you talk about people you love becoming unrecognizable. I think you're hitting on something that maybe hasn't been discussed as much. A lot of people really changed,
Mhm.
and um, I suppose some did for the better, especially witnessing what went on with George Floyd and maybe coming to some realizations. But a lot of people changed for the worst.
Yeah, agreed. At first when I was working on that particular verse, I was talking strictly about uh, COVID. But the more I thought about it, the more it became about, um, the era of Trumpism and COVID. Um, I'm sorry, that's my dog making noises in her sleep. I don't know if you can hear that, but I'll close the door. Um,
No problem.
um,
My cat finds his way on the radio all the time. It's no big deal.
um, so yeah, it became a way to kind of hint at um, the sort of acceptance of misinformation and uh, people who I, generally considered to be of sound mind, you know, suddenly latching on to, you know, uh, all the garbage that we were being exposed to during that time, and still are, simply because, you know, um, of who's of one of the presidential candidates right now. Um, I think that's why so many people are very much ready for this particular era to be over. Um, I don't know if it'll get better. Some of it I think is just indicative of what the internet has become and what social media is. And but I hope that it perhaps can be less offensive. Um, that we have a little better grounding as far as trying to um, accept something resembling objective reality in some ways.
I think it's a great hope, but probably not the direction things are headed in.
Right. Well, that's my fear. You know. Um,
Anyway, um, I guess you talk about an empty nest, people becoming so different and distorted, always being on the road. Do you feel like life has gotten lonelier for you?
hmm. Yes, but um, I guess sometimes I've described myself as being a loner who enjoys company.
Hmm.
So,
I think
I
I
have,
relate to you a little more than a little more than you might expect. I am extremely good at being self-sufficient in my head, but
Mhm.
if I have someone interesting to talk to, I am certainly game.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I love solitude, but um, you know, from a creative standpoint, obviously it's the interaction with other people and or just being out in the world. That's where the songs come from. Um, whether triggered by something that happens in present tense or the fact that what is then present tense experience triggers a memory. Um, so, uh, but I also, again, solitude is important. Um, you know, I still love to read, although I've been slacking miserably the, the last few weeks. On the road, it's been more difficult as I've gotten older to sustain, you know, well, consciousness in the basic, in the basic sense of, you know, going from one town to another with a more sort of almost militaristic perspective. Okay, what's our agenda today? Today we drive to the next town and we go to the hotel first and we have a nap and then we load in, and sound check and all that. Um, but it's just become more important to take care of myself, you know. Some of that's age, some of that's, I don't know, probably post cancer stuff. Hard to say, but I'm glad to be out there again. Feels good. Shows have been good. Um, the response to the record has been great, so I'm grateful for that.
All right, let's hear the title track and we'll be right back.
All right.